So our agenda today is pretty straightforward. I think we're just going to run through a series of data transformation and data reporting examples. Some of them are native FME kind of reporting tools, and some of them are with software that we've got from some of our partners. And we're going to cover reporting output in PDF, Excel, a bit of HTML. We do have with us today Robin, Natalie, and Dan, who are on our support team. So as I said, on your questions panel there, do fire off questions as we go, and they will try and keep up. And I will just say right at the start here, all the material, or most of the material that we can share will be posted up on our website, on our webinar's website. So the PowerPoint recording of this webinar, and also
some workspaces.
Some of the workspaces and examples that we can put up, and you'll receive an email at the end of the webinar that will tell you where those links are. Okay, so what is reporting? Well, a report is a sort of a format of a formatted result of data queries from various data sources, and contains useful data that you might want to use for decision making or further data analysis. So is FME a reporting tool like Crystal Reports or BERT or something like that? Not really, but FME has many of the characteristics of reporting application. We've got the ability to load data from many disparate data sources, so that's the primary function of FME, including demographic databases and, importantly in the case of FME, spatial databases. We've got hooks to external applications such as geocoders and drive time and routing tools. So we can pull in data from different places and enhance that data. We've got the ability to merge data together or to do interesting joins, including spatial joins, so that's a really good part of the data transformation part of FME. And in FME as well, before you generate reports, you can do the data validation and data restructuring. So we're going to be looking at some of the presentation and styling tools in FME, tools for creating summary statistics and maybe doing transpose or pivot kind of things. And then we're also going to be looking at hooks to additional applications that we work with some of our technology partners, like Tetrad, their Sitewise toolkit, Map Publisher from Avenza. And so the first example that we're going to look at, Brian, I think is City of Lloydminster, so over to you.
Thanks, Mark. So the first example we have here is from the City of Lloydminster. And they're in Alberta, Canada, so not too far away from where we are. And what they wanted to do was really automate their reporting process. So they were using a few tools to generate map reports and different reports. And these were used to serve to the public and serve internally to themselves. But what they were finding is that they were using just too many applications, and they wanted to use FME to kind of bring everything together. So what we can do first is just look at their workspace. So I'll bring that up. So we'll get a look at FME right off the bat here. And at the same time, what I'll do is bring up their output. So this is an example of one of their types of maps that they've been building. And this was now generated with FME. So you can see it's just a basic base map of the city. We can do a bit of zooming in here. And you can see it's vector data. So you can zoom really far in. You're not going to get any sort of pixelization that you might get with a raster. And you can really get a good sense of what the map looks like. The other neat thing about this too is that they've built kind of a dynamic grid around the outside. So we can take a look at that. And you'll see these sort of UTM zones here. It's all dynamic. So if they were going to throw in a totally new set of spatial data, then this would update automatically, which is great. So here is the FME workspace. And we'll zoom in a little bit. So everything here on the left is just data being brought in. So this is their spatial data, and we'll take a zoom in here, which is great. So for example, this is their parcel data. The neat thing about PDF is that there's two really important transformers. So when you're trying to style PDF data, the first thing here is the PDF styler. And if you were to open this up, so they're bringing in their parcel data here, which is just lines, and they can give it a width, and they can color it, and it's all done in this one easy-to-use transformer.
So they can color it, because that's a black and white.
It is a black and white, but if they wanted funky colors on there, they could do anything they wanted. So that's really great. And it handles text, it handles lines. Here is, when we looked at that PDF, there's those street names, so here's where they're doing that, and they're giving it a nice bold italic type of look. So it's kind of funky there, and yeah, so all this data is being brought in. It looks like a lot of transformers here, but really it's just the data being filtered out and then brought in through the PDF stylers. And the second really key transformer to PDF is this PDF page formatter. And this guy is actually new for 2015. And what it is it's a way to position your features on your PDF really easily. So before, what we had to do was kind of build space in the PDF, and you would give it specific points on the PDF, and I think it's page units or something like that. So this has made it much easier for someone to come in and really design a PDF and make it great. So our example here with Lloydminster is fairly simple. They just have a maps around here. But if we look back at the PDF, there is this logo here on the bottom right. And let's zoom out a bit. So here it is again on the bottom right. This logo is actually sitting in this transformer in this box. It's a bit hard to see here, but it's just this box here. So let's say your logo changed, or you wanted to position it somewhere else, or you wanted to make it bigger or smaller. All you have to do is just move this box around. So it's very, very easy to use. And that's it. And then they're just writing out, here's our PDF writer, and they're just writing out to a PDF here. So not too complicated a workspace, but really allows them to create their reports in a really nice, organized way and not have to jump between different software packages to build things up. So we'll just close that down there. Yeah, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay, great. So we're going to look at another example here too, and this is another customer example. And this comes to us from the city, or the government of La Rioja in Spain. And what they've done is they've built up a really nice orthophoto map. And this was done with FME. And I'll bring it up for you to see. There we go. So you can see it's really detailed. It's got lots of stuff going on. And it's really visual. Really captures the eye. So another neat thing that you can do with PDF and FME is create layers. So over on the left-hand side here in Adobe, we have the layer manager. And this will really give us a sense of all the different types of data that they're bringing in to make this one map. The nice thing is you can, if you are working with this, you can turn layers on and off. In this case, this is our orthophoto image that they've brought in, and it's an ECW raster. So one of the neat things is that if they were to build a different map with a different orthophoto image, they just have to swap it out in the workspace, run it again, and then they have a whole new image in this window here. Some of the other interesting parts of this workspace, or this PDF, sorry, is on the bottom left they have these neat little inset maps, which you can see here. And these are coming from an Oracle spatial database. I'll just turn them off so you get a sense of where they are. So now they have a raster image. They're using Oracle spatial. They're also using shapefiles to build this grid here, this blue grid. If you guys can see that. And all these, this logo on the left, their scale bar, their map name. It's all coming from simple image files, PNGs. So lots of different information coming together.
And this is a spatial
right.
PDF as well, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a spatial PDF. So there's tools in Adobe here where you can measure location and distance. So it has its own location. So if we were to go click on this tool, geospatial location tool, and scroll over the orthophoto image, you'll see lat long information pop up.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah, so the folks at the province of Rioja in Spain do some really very cool things with FME, and one of them there has just chatted in to say, don't forget to tell everybody how great the wine is in Rioja as well, so we'll have to go and visit there.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be a good trip to take. So that's great. And the next trick here is if the last example had a raster image, but what you can do in FME is take that to another level and use Mapnic. And what Mapnic does is takes vector data and converts it into a raster. And in this example, we've built a whole topographic map with FME to PDF, and it's just a really great way to have kind of a qualitative representation on a map. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we've just built a kind of a simple frame to it here, but all the magic is really in this image. So let's take a zoom in, shall we, Mark?
Yep. We do have a couple of questions about what version of Adobe we're using, and we're using Acrobat. It does give you a couple of additional tools like that spatial tool, but all of the PDF files that we're looking at here, you would be able to use Adobe Reader, which there is no licensing for, but you wouldn't get some of the enhanced things like spatial tracking and looking at attributes and so on, which we'll see in a minute.
Yeah. There won't be any measuring distance, that sort of thing. But it does function really well if you're just sharing data out to somebody else and they need an easy way to see it. So here's our rasterized image. And what's really neat about this is you'll see kind of a hill shade effect here. There's a DEM being used here that's being hill shaded. So we get this kind of 3D relief. Another neat thing that's being done in this workspace is all these streams, which I'll zoom in on one here. Right around there. So the number of tributaries that come into each stream ends up making the stream much bolder. So you can see here we have some tributaries coming in, and they're a bit of a lighter blue, and then it gets bolder and bolder as it goes. So it's a neat way to have kind of a qualitative look to the map. There we go. That should give you a good look at it. So you can see here the number of tributaries coming in, and we get a nice bold look.
And so this also does illustrate the difference between the vector data that you were looking at earlier on, and now we're looking at a raster PDF. So as you zoom in, you can start to see the pixelation. So the raster PDFs are a bit limited in terms of the zoom range that you can work in, isn't that right?
Right.
Although this is pretty well zoomed in and still looking pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a few things with the Mapnic rasterizer. You're giving it a set column and row width, so you can play around with it and make it look as good as possible. So that's a great way to do it. So let's take a look at the workspace that made this. And you'll notice right off the bat there's quite a bit of action going on this canvas. But really what's happening here is that there's a lot of data being brought in. So we'll zoom in and take a look at that. So we have a lot of map elements being brought in here. You'll see the contour lines and forested areas, water bodies, and some of the railways, I believe. So there's lots of feature types being brought in. As well, you'll see the stream data is being brought in a separate reader there. And this is all shapefile data too, which is great. And the third thing that's being brought in is our DEM raster. And I mentioned the hill shade. So we have a very simple transformer here called the raster hill shader. So our DEM is a geotiff, and it's just being run through this raster hill shader here. And that's what's giving it the hill shade, which is great. And this is where Mapnic comes in. So all this information is being brought in, and then it's going straight out to this Mapnic rasterizer, which is this nice transformer here. And we can take a quick look inside. I will note that we have a really great webinar on Mapnic that we did not too long ago, I don't think. And so you can get a lot more examples in there and a lot more information on this. Mapnic itself is just I believe it's an open source library that most of the time you'd have to use programming to be able to use some of the functions of it, but what we've done is incorporated this into FME, so you don't have to write any code. You can just fire up this transformer and away you go. So that's a great part of it. One thing to note is it can handle all kinds of types of data. So we're even rasterizing a raster here, which is kind of fun. And then it can take polygons and lines and even text down at the bottom here. So lots of options within one single transformer. So it's quite easy to use, which is great. And then like we did before, here comes our PDF page formatter. And if we open that up, it looks quite familiar to the PDF. So here's more of an example of where we've created these boxes, and you can see there's a title coming in here and a label and an inset map. So all these features are being positioned into specific places in the PDF. So it's a really great tool. And then again, everything's just being written out to our PDF writer.
And of course, in this case, it doesn't make sense to have multiple layers going out to the PDF writer, because basically all we're outputting is that image, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. But if you wanted to do that, you could do a fan out on the writer, which would create all these different layers, or you could have multiple feature types here.
Yeah.
And that will give you your layers, which is great. So our next thing we're going to talk about is Avenza Map Publisher, and I'll pass it over to Mark here.
Yeah, so Avenza is one of our technology partners here at SAFE. They've hooked up FME to their Map Publisher tools. They're renowned for creating geospatial PDF data sets, so that's their speciality. So really what their sort of role is they're trying to use FME to read multiple formats and data structures, format the data or transform it into a suitable data structure for output to PDF, and then they enhance FME's output with their auto-labeling and then creating their geospatial tools. And they've got a lot of good detailed tools like more sophisticated symbology, the creation of grids and graticules and so on. So thanks to Mark Graham at Avenza for putting this set of examples together for us. So the goal of their processes is the automation of repetitive tasks to generate the consistent output. They take multiple inputs of data to merge them together in interesting ways and then generate the output. All of these examples could be automated using FME Server, and as we said at the start, we're not really talking too much about FME Server, but that's our more scalable enterprise product that all of these tasks could be sent up to do in scheduled jobs. So within the process flow of Map Publisher, you would read in the data with FME. There's a workspace there that transforms the data, outputs the data in a format. Actually, they use our FFS format in a suitable way. And then that's brought into Map Publisher and output to geospatial PDF maps. These examples are actually from the island of Niue, which is not quite in the track of that cyclone Pam that just devastated Vanuatu. Okay. All right, so this is an example of one of the PDF files. So they're really more aimed at producing map sheets, I guess, or plottable map books. This is an example of one of the workspaces that they could use there. Should we open up the PDF file, Brian?
Yeah, let's open that up.
Again, and then let's just zoom in on one of the corners down here just to show what that's like. So this is a again, a vectorized PDF data set, and it's a combination of FME transformation and some of the symbolization that they can do in the Map Publisher tools. So in the middle there, what we've got is a switch which has actually got a point with 4 other entities that sit right on top of each other. So there, what they're doing is they're exploding that so that they can see all the entities there with a little leader line back to where the actual location of those switches are. I think we can go into the tools and yeah, the model tree, and then you can see all the layers that are in there. And if you look at the switches, one of those switches, you could look at one of the switches, you can see all the attributions. And then in these particular data sets, you can actually edit the individual attributes there, so that you could use this as a worksheet to go out in the field, and if you installed a new switch or a new transformer, you might want to put that new model number in there and then bring it back to the office. So it is a bit more of an interactive PDF in this case. And again, it is a geospatial PDF, so if we were looking at the geospatial tools, we'd be able to see where we were on the map, I think. Yep. So, so it is a little bit more sophistication to what FME can do for you on the PDF publishing side of things. And again, the whole idea is to create a repeatable workflow to produce these outputs. Okay. So that's kind of like the PDF output and the map generation side of things. A large part of reporting is also around summarizing data. So FME has some great tools for summarizing data in the workflow, or the workspace as we call it here. That includes statistics generation, building a table transpose or rotating tables, cross-tabulation tools, or cross-tab or pivots as they're sometimes called. We don't have time today to dig into all those individual tools, but I've included a link here on these slides. So there's quite a good article on our FMEpedia website with example workspaces that have the FME tools here that you can use for doing some of this work. And I think a couple of the examples that we're going to show in a minute sort of incorporate them in a more general sense. So we're not going to deep dive into those, but just want to let you know that they are in FME and you can use those as well. So I think what we're going to do is move on to using FME to generate some Excel spreadsheets. Is that right?
Right. So we'll start with a quick hand raise. If whoever uses Excel could raise their hands, we'll get a good sense of...
Yeah, we've got about 350 people here today, so well, hopefully we've got some proportion of those that are...
oh yeah, lots
Excel,
of hands going up.
Yeah, it's still climbing, but at least 30% of people have touched Excel. I guess we could talk about Google Spreadsheets as well if we wanted to.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a quick little example of using a template with FME. So what this can do is just provide you a really easy way to set up a worksheet, and then when you get new data in, you can just rerun the workspace, and you'll have a brand new worksheet with all your information already set up. So it's a really good automated way to generate a report with Excel. The best way to take a look at this is let's look at the template itself. And we'll just open up Excel here and fire it up. So what we're going to look at is some precipitation data. This is for Vancouver. We do get a lot of rain, so there should be lots of data here. And in this template, we have just a series of 5 years. We have some pivot tables here. I'll just run through our sheets. Some averages of each month. And then our source data is located in this input test sheet. The neat thing about this is there is a named range here. So it's called weather table. And this is going to come into play in our workspace in a minute. So just to note that. But it's great. We've set up some charting and some pivot tables. And now let's use this with a totally new set of data. So we'll open our workspace. We can close down our template. We don't need it anymore. So here it is, pretty simple. We have a CSV reader here, and we have our Excel writer. What we can do is take a look at the data we're going to bring in. But first I'll show you where that template comes into play. So here's our Excel writer in the navigator. I'm going to open it up, and you'll see down here there's a template file parameter. And so this is pointing to our weather data template. So that's where that gets brought in. I'll use the data inspector to look at the new data that we're going to bring in. So we'll bring this up. So here's our data inspector. And what we have here is for the years 1940 all the way to 2012, we have precipitation data. So a much larger data set than what exists in our template. So we have total rain and total snow, and we can scroll down and see all these years here. So the great thing about reports is that we can bring this in and have a really easy way to kind of make sense of all this data. So let's take a look. So here is our workspace again, and the only other key thing to note about this is our writer. This is how we're specifying where the data is going to go. And I mentioned before there was a named range. So what we're doing is all the data that's going to be written out to Excel is going to go into a named range called weather table. And that's how everything works. So this is the big key, Mark. This is what you want. You want this weather table to be specified. And the reason is because in your template, everything refers to that named range. So that's how it works. So let's run it. So we're going to bring in all that new information and create a totally new Excel file. So we have it here. I'll just show you. So here's our new file. I'll load that up. That's great. So now you can see much larger set of data. We have our chart filled out here. I'll go back and just look. This is our input test sheet that we wrote. And you can see the new named range is much larger. So that's great. And all of our pivot tables have updated. And now we can start to make sense and see if there's any kind of trends from 1940 to 2012 with rain in BC, Mark, or in Vancouver.
That's right, yeah.
See anything interesting there other than lots of rain?
Well, just a big spike at the bottom there when we had a big snowfall in 1970.
Yeah. That's great.
So there, this is a really great approach if you're familiar with using Excel. You've already been using some of the tools like pivots and charting tools in Excel, and now you want to automate those processes, reload new data as it comes in. And so in your case, the workspace was very simple. You didn't really have to process the data too much, but in many cases you're bringing in data from disparate data sources, might be merging it, filtering out different values based on conditional tests you can do in FME, and then loading that data table, which is your input test, is that right?
Yep.
In there, you've got that sheet there, the input test,
yep.
And then sending that out, the results out. So that's, if you're an Excel user, which I think about a third of you were, that's probably a good way to produce some really spiffy reports as well.
Yeah, and those templates can grow, and you can change them all the time and make them more complex as you go. So it's just a great way to do things. Now we're going to switch and talk a little bit about Tetrad Sitewise, and I'll pass it over to Mark.
Yeah, so Tetrad, another of our technology partners, who built a series of plugins for FME. So this is integrating their tool set right into FME itself. Tetrad have kind of focused more on site location and demographic kind of tools, used a lot for store and facility site location tasks, and there's a lot of reporting and summarizing of data around that. So they've integrated about 12 or 13 tools into FME from their Sitewise toolkit, and they become transformers within FME that you can use. Okay. And so, as I said, they're kind of focused on market analysis, site evaluation, using demographic data. They supply actually quite a wide range of demographic data with their tool if you need it. So that can be done. That data can come from the Nielsen Claritas, AGS, Environics data sets, Pitney Bowes data sets. And within their tool set, they've got tools that do drive time analysis, and the speciality is a very rapid retrieval of these quite complex demographics data sets. Should we have a look at one of their Excel reports? Because they can produce out of their toolkits both Excel and PDF reports. So this is one of the Excel data sets. So you can see it's got several tables, maps inserted in there as well, data summaries, and I think down below somewhere, yeah, those are the drive time polygons for possible site location analysis. So it's quite a lot of sophisticated tools that they've embedded right into FME for generating these different reports, mainly around demographic and site location information.
Right. And they can also produce PDFs.
Yep, yeah, we've got a PDF there of the same information. So that PDF was then automatically generated right out of the tool. So you either produce an Excel report or a PDF report.
Right. That's great. Right, and we have another example here. Now this uses FME Server. We're going to take it in a bit different direction and talk about kind of reporting into a browser or into email. And we have this demo on our website, so you can always try it out. But we'll just sort of show you the output that comes out of it. So you can imagine that you have a validation task that you're always running. Someone's sending you in data and you need to validate against it. What FME Server can do and FME Workbench is take that data and run it through a series of validation steps and then spit out a report of anything that kind of fails validation and needs to be fixed up. So in this case, you could email in a CAD file and get back an email of anything that failed, or even a message that said, yep, everything checks out, which is great. Or what you could do as well is load it in through a web interface and just get straight to your browser an HTML report. So we can take a look at an example of that. I'll open this up here. So I'll open this up and just give you a sense of just a simple report that we're bringing back, but this could be made any way you'd like. In this case, these are the validation features that failed your particular set of rules, and we're showing a nice little map on the side and what's wrong with the feature, what needs to be fixed up.
Yeah, so data validation is a very big part of FME's workflows. Actually, we have a lot of people focusing on data validation. Actually, we did a webinar on it a month and a half ago or something. So if you're interested in some of the data validation tools in FME, this is more around CAD data validation before it's brought into a facilities kind of management GIS product. But part of data validation is reporting out what is wrong with the data, if there is anything wrong. Of course, you would also want to report out what's right with it, if it all passes. And so that can be done in a wide variety of ways. Excel reports would be a good way of doing that as well, but just being able to put out a little image snippet here is a great thing because it really shows whoever's going to have to fix that data where the bad piece of data is, and then they can quickly go to, in this case, a CAD file and address that need. And as Brian said, that this is run through FME Server, so it's one of our online FME Server demos. Go back to that website. We could just show people where that is on the website. It's fmepedia.com, isn't it?
Yep. I'll bring that up. And Just look for data validation. Will take us right there. There we go.
Yeah. And so people can go there and just run that if they want, I guess.
Yeah. And we do have a large number of other types of demonstrations for FME Server as well. So if you're interested in that, great place to look. So great. So another thing we're going to talk about is FME and Tableau.
Yeah, so Tableau is a business intelligence package. This example comes from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, their GIS group there. Sasha Stefanov has put this together for us. And so this again just illustrates FME working with other tools that might be more appropriate for the kind of reporting and data analysis that you want to do. So again, FME has access to a very wide range of data formats. It can restructure and clean up the data as you move it across. And then in this case, it's bringing it into Tableau for some data analysis that they want to do. And so Tableau is not so strong on the GIS or mapping side of things. Let's go to the next slide there. Yeah, so in Tableau, you can just bring in basic maps. And what they wanted to do here at the University of Massachusetts is really integrate a bit more closely some of their GIS data that's kind of illustrated there on the right-hand side. And then they do a whole bunch of different analyses on what's happening in the different buildings around operations, teaching and instruction, see what's going on, see who's in which buildings. And so how do they bring that GIS data in and integrate it with some of the other data that they have already in Tableau? So FME can be used to load in this GIS data into Tableau. Again, Tableau doesn't have such a strong GIS, so the sort of format is a little difficult to generate, but in FME that becomes easy. And of course, once you've got it set up again, all this stuff can be automated, so that's the great part of using FME. So they've brought that data in as the building footprints with the different information about the buildings into a SQL table. And then from there, they can now connect that information to the data analysis that they want to do. So in this case here was just a pretty simple data analysis that they're doing. In this case, actually, they used the building centroids that had been derived from the building outlines. And so in what they've done is they built a visualization that's comparing the room capacity in some of the buildings that they have with the class enrollment that they actually have for the class that's attending that. And so they can look at basically where people are at any particular time of day. So in this case here at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, they've got the enrollment for all the classes in all the different rooms located in the buildings that they've got, and they're showing what the room capacity is versus class enrollment. And so I think the way around that they're showing this is the color shows the room capacity, so the darker the color, the more capacity of the room, and then the size of the box located next to that building indicates the class enrollment or the number of people they expect to be in that room. And of course that can be used for all sorts of stuff like emergency management. You know, if there's they have to have a campus shutdown, they know where the bulk of the people are in the different classrooms and then can respond to that.
Right.
So again, that's FME. That's three examples that we've had, I think, today of FME being integrated. Well, maybe four, because if we include Excel as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Just outputting to an Excel template. So FME being used in a capacity where we're integrating with other tools that might be more appropriate for the kind of specific reporting or data analysis that you're using, but you're using the Power FME to read the wide range of data structures that we can read, and we can also then transform the data, clean it up a bit for you on the way, and then either just do the reporting straight out of FME like the Lloydminster and Rioja folks, or put it out to a tool that might give you a bit more of a sophisticated output in Excel and so on.
Right.
Okay. Well, we're running right ahead of time here, which is unusual for our webinars, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great. We do have one extra bonus example if you want to run through it.
I kind of wish you hadn't mentioned that, but we could have a look at that. You want to jump to that slide at the end there, and we can bring that up. So yeah, this was a fun one that we put together a while ago for people who are servicing some transformer sites in Cambridge, the UK, and so they wanted to find out where they need to position a WC. So a WC is a water closet in England, so that's your bathroom. So if they need to be on site for a long period of time, they need to find out where their WC is. So I think what we're going to have to do is make me the presenter so that I can bring up that little example. So this is reading data out of Small World, and what I'll do is I'll open up that workspace. Okay, get rid of some of the stuff I've got here. And so again, this is just an example that we put together in-house just to kind of illustrate how FME can go out, merge together different data sets, and then actually go out to external tool sets and enhance the data. So here we're actually reading from an XML file, which is on actually the Cambridge Open Data website. So if we go to the actual source data there, you can see this is coming in from an HTTP site at the Cambridge data that shows where all their public bathroom locations are. The substation here, in this case, is coming from a MapInfo dataset, but the original example came from a Small World data store. And then we're going to output the results to a PDF file. So on the way, we're enhancing the data. We're using the ArcGIS Online drive time analysis tool. So FME has got a custom transformer that will call out to that. And we're also using the ArcGIS Online routing, so we can pull up a route for that data set as well. We're using Brian's favorite tool, I think, at the moment, is the PDF page formatter to lay out this simple PDF. Somebody here at Safe Software, Iris, who some of you might know, put together a custom transformer for building tables within FME. So if you're building a relatively straightforward tabular information, we've got a custom transformer to help you do that. And then the output would be this PDF file, and so I'm just going to open that up there, and so that's what that looks like. So pretty straightforward example. I have another example actually where we split out all the layers so you can select each of the different layers independently and so on. So it's just an example of really what FME is good at, is merging together disparate data sets and then producing the output that you need to generate. Okay, back to you. Do you have to take presentation rights back just to wrap up?
Yeah, let's do that. So we'll just go back here to where we were.
Okay, so yeah, so just to wrap up, if you are relatively new to FME and some of this went over your head, have a look at where to get started. We've got tutorials online. We've got all the webinars that we've done in the past, and this one will be included in that. Will be posted online, so you can peruse those with the webinar materials. We have free courses that we run, and so if you're new to FME or you want to top up your skills with FME, try one of our free online instructor-led training classes. Next one is the 25th, 26th of March this month, and then actually we have an advanced FME desktop coming up at the 31st and the 1st of April. So people who are a bit more advanced in FME might want to join in on that. So just register online on the training pages. If you don't have time to sit on those 2 mornings, all our instructor-led classes are 1 or 2 morning sessions, then we've got self-paced learning online as well.
Right.
Yep.
And of course we have our great knowledge base, so if you're looking just for a particular set of information, always searching there is a great idea.
Yeah, just like that validation webinar that we had there.
Right.
Yep.
And our world tour.
And of course our world tour. So that's coming up. We're going to be visiting 60 cities worldwide, 25 plus within North America, US and Canada, starting 8th of April here in Vancouver, and then we're going to be traipsing off four groups of us across the US the following week to visit various cities. And maybe have we got a web page there where you can show where that where those cities might be?
Sure. Go to our trusty browser again.
So safe though.
Just go to our website.
And there it is right there. There's the map. And then if you scroll down, then, oops, you got to, yeah. So those are all the cities there. So if you feel like attending one of our sessions in North America or one of the sessions hosted by our partners, feel free to register for that. Most of the partner events also have a safe software person joining them as well. So you will get in touch with a safe software person. And I think with that, then, we're kind of going to wrap it up for today, 10 minutes early, which is probably a record for one of our webinars. So do we have some questions from our questions panel? Natalie, Dan, and Robin, what have you got for us? They're not fessing up, but I saw as things.
Sorry, just took me a moment to figure out how to turn myself on. There were a number of questions about the kind of what Adobe what you were using to look at those PDFs, and so I think you did mention it was just Adobe Acrobat, but perhaps you could give us another look at it in terms of. I think most of us were surprised by the geospatial location tool, and then the ability to edit attributes.
Yeah, so that is, as far as we can tell, we're not Adobe experts, so we just found this out the other day while Brian was prepping for the webinar, is that Adobe Reader, which is the free reader, doesn't have these tools in them. You can view all of the PDF files that we've been displaying in Adobe Reader, but we've been using Acrobat, and they do, and I don't even know how much that costs. There is a license for it. It's not very much. But that does give you that geospatial tool plus the ability to poke around in the attribution there as well. I'm not sure. There's also a thing called PDF forms, and we haven't played around in there yet, and that would be the ideal way to send out people into the field with work orders and so on. But certainly the Avenza PDFs, they were able to edit the attribution there.
In the standard reader, though, you do have layer capabilities and a lot of the basic functionality, zoom and pan, and all those great things that anyone who needs to use PDF can use. It's just for some of the advanced stuff, then Acrobat really comes into play and can help.
Cool. Another thing I noticed, if you go back to your weather workspace, I found this the other day, that you could actually define a cell in the workspace, in the spreadsheet, as a formula, and that's done in that attribute creator in that workspace.
Right. So here's our attribute creator, and we're actually just putting in, this will look familiar if you're used to Excel, but this is just an Excel formula being spelled out here. And then when this is written out, it picks it up as a formula and populates the cells, which is really great.
Yeah, so that's going into that output Excel as the formula, not as the value.
Right.
Yeah.
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 And we're using that to calculate, I believe, the
cumulative
data here. So if we open up our input test, this is where everything went. Here's our cumulative row here.
If you clicked on one of those, it should be the formula. There it is.
And there's our formula.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah. Good eye, Robin.
Oh, I just thought that was so cool when I discovered it. So just great new things we're doing with our Excel writer. There was a bunch of questions about how you place things with the PDF page formatter. How do you know the extents of the data and sort of those kind of questions? And I think most of it's done just by the page size. Like you define your page as 8.5 by 11 or whatever, and then it's all done using point values.
Or units of measure, centimeters. You can convert it, I think. But yeah, that is. I will say that's still probably a work in progress. There are some things that we need to tie down so that people can output or place the data in a real-world scale within that panel that Brian is illustrating here. So where it says tiled in there, that we would like to be able to have more control over the scale of the data that's placed in there, so that you would be able to really have true scale data in there. So that you could do it now, but you'd have to calculate it and kind of fudge all those numbers there, I think.
Yeah, that's what's happening with the City of Lloydminster's workspace. Is they're calculating scale, just doing a straight calculation using the page value that's in here versus the feature value. And then that way they can adjust these windows to be able to produce the proper scale for their desired map. But with these features, if you're just throwing in one set of data, it's just going to maximize within the window to the extent of your data. So if you can use multiple windows, you can do a few little tricks there to make it work.
Any more, Robin?
Somebody's still a little confused about how you create the area where the data or the map will be placed. And I must admit I found this a bit confusing when I was trying to put rasters into my PDF page formatter. So it seems to take that image or the data part of it and define an area in the PDF page formatter.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, basically, you just draw a box. If you go in there, we'll corrupt the one that we've got in there.
Yeah.
If you open that up.
The key thing, though, is your whatever feature you want to end up within each particular box, you create an output here. So every time I connect, if I just drag, if I have the right tool there, I just drag say this was a new input, I can connect it here, which will create a whole new box for me within the formatter. So that exists over to the right here, or the left, sorry. And then I can just drag it onto the canvas and just move it around. And then that feature would then fill this box.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, good. The rest of the questions are all looking a bit technical, so we may actually have to get back to people afterwards on most of them. So
yeah, you've had it looks like a lot of good questions coming in, so that looks like we've hit a chord there with this idea of doing reporting from within FME. Like we said earlier on, the webinar will be posted up on our website, the recording, the PowerPoints, any of the examples that we can share, we will share up there as well. Robin, Natalie, and Dan will follow up with any of the questions that weren't able to answer while we were talking away here. Okay.
Great.
So just to wrap it up, so
close this guy down. Go back to our slideshow here. Lots of examples.
Okay, so thank you very much for attending and joining us on our reporting day. Of course, we'd like to also thank the customers and partners who supplied some of those example data sets that we were working with there. That's always most important, because that's where we're getting the real world examples that people are working with. Thanks to Robin, Natalie, and Dan for answering the questions, and of course, as always, a special thanks to Stephanie Warner here at SAFE, who does a great job of making our PowerPoints look so great. Okay, so with that, I think that's goodbye from me, and
that's goodbye from him. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks.